How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of your favorite swim bait podcast, Scales and Tails, episode 172. We're joined by a guy all the way over there in Minnesota, the Great White North. You guys hear me talk about how cold and crappy winter is here in Michigan. Well, Konnor and I were just talking before the show, and it might be cold here, but it is a lot colder over there in Minnesota right now. So, finally joined by somebody who I feel like, at least at this point in time of the year, can definitely relate to what I'm going through as far as the winter blues, kind of away from the open water and away from the bass and swim bait fishing thing. Konnor is over there in Minnesota, and obviously we'll learn a little bit more about where he lives and kind of what he does and everything. But we're joined by Mr. Konnor Kraft, maybe the best name for somebody who wants to get into bait building, dude. You really lucked out with your last name.
Yes, yeah. I didn't take me too long to put the name Hand Krafted to the business, so it was kind of gimme. I didn't have to think much more about it.
Dude, works out so well. All right, Konnor, kind of introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us where you're from, what you do, and then we're gonna be doing something new for 2025. We're gonna have little icebreaker questions, though. Always be usually something different. Maybe I'll resort back to one every once in a while. But I got two icebreaker questions for Konnor. So once he introduces himself, we'll kind of use those, break the ice a little bit, get the conversation rolling. Then we'll probably get into the chronological order about how Konnor got into swim bait fishing up there in Minnesota, how he got into the whole bait building side of things, whether it was before or after he got into swim baits. And we'll just break down his whole life story on the whole swim bait scene. But Konnor, tell us who you are, man. What do you do?
Yeah, well, I'm Konnor Kraft. I'm 20. I'm from Plymouth, Minnesota, so about 15 minutes west of the Twin Cities. Started making baits back in about 2019, and right around then got into the swim bait game and just been loving it ever since. I make um, hand carved wood baits strictly, and it's a grind, but there's not a whole lot of people doing it. But I love what I do, and it's fun to see how far I've come in the past 4 or 5 years, and it's fun being able to start young and see where I can go with it in the future. So.
Heck yeah, dude. Absolutely awesome. Your stuff, absolutely beautiful for anybody who hasn't seen it. I'll obviously, as always, link all Konnor's stuff in the show notes and the description so you guys can go check out his page. The paint, the details you put, the gill plates, dude, absolutely beautiful stuff. But before we get into that too much deeper, so first icebreaker question for you. So you're on your way to the lake. Probably, most likely, it's going to be in the summertime for guys like you and I. You're on the way to the lake, early morning bite. You're up, you got to get up, you got to drive out to the lake. It's an hour away, and oh man, I got to get gas there. So you're on your way, stop at the gas station. What are some of the essentials you're picking up at the gas station to kind of start your morning or to kind of have some reserve snacks for the rest of the day?
Yeah. I gotta go meat sticks for sure. I love a good fresh meat stick. Something you find in the fridge, not like a prepackaged one you see in the aisles. Then I gotta go big Powerade fan, like a blue or red Powerade. Um, and then I could pretty much live off that. It depends, how late I was up the night before. I might pick up an energy drink, but those are kind of few and far between. So I'll keep it simple. I think Powerade, meat sticks, maybe a little salty bag of chips for a little midday snack. But
There you go.
yeah.
There you go. Heck, I did. Yeah, usually I'm a Cliff Bar guy. I'll get a white macadamian chocolate chip Cliff Bar usually. That I'll get one of those. Usually I'll get a chocolate milk, especially if it's like if we're going ice fishing, dude, I will always get a chocolate milk just to start the day off. And then I don't know, I think they gotta be a popular thing over by you, but the cheese witches, do you guys have those where it's like the two pieces of cheese for like the bread and then the lunch meat in the middle, like the salami in the
Oh
middle?
yeah. Yep.
Dude, that's a
Yep.
go-to. People sleep on that. I talk about it sometimes, like around people like that live by me, and they're like, "What the hell is a cheese witch?" And I'm like, "Man, they are. I mean, it really. There's not much to it. It's two pieces of cheese with a piece of salami or piece of whatever in between the middle, but dude, they're damn good. That Cliff Bar and a chocolate milk. That's about all I need most times. And then for the second question, last question, while you're on the way to the lake, maybe 5 minutes before you get to the lake, or either that or when you first start the trip, you kind of got to wake yourself up. What are a couple songs, two or three songs that you're putting on to kind of get ready and kind of get in the mindset of what you got to go do today?
Um, I got one main one in mind. That's Thunderstruck. I know that's. I'll just keep it with that. Yeah, that song will early morning. That'll get you going.
Get you going, playing the drums on the steering wheel on the way there.
Oh yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. Heck yeah, man. All right, now that we're in conversation, we don't just have to dive right into it. Now we kind of got a natural groove going on here. So you said 2019 was when you kind of got into the swim bait stuff, kind of the building side of things. So let's kick it back further than that. Especially growing up in Minnesota, I would make the guess that you were probably into fishing before that and probably into it at a young age.
Oh yeah. Yep. Um, we had a cabin, Western Wisconsin, not too far of a drive. So I grew up there. Can't say it was the best fishing, but bluegills off the dock, pelican worm, stereotypical kind of how it all started. Um, but from there, it kind of it's just the beginning. Um, my grandpa had a boat. Didn't take us out too often, but those times I did, obviously, it was great, great memories, and just even fed into the addiction even more. Then kind of as I grew up, started to be able to like buy my own stuff, do my own rods, ask for a rod for my birthday at some point, and then just go from there. And then you can ride bikes to local lakes, and then your license, and it just took off from there. So I'd say pretty young, simple, fishing off the dock at the cabin's probably mostly where it all started.
Heck yeah, dude. Is your excuse me, is your family like I mean, from what I know, and it's a stereotypical thing, Wisconsin people in Wisconsin, people in Minnesota, if they're into fishing there, you could bet a lot of money that they're like really big into walleye fishing. So is walleye fishing something that your family was like super big into that you ever kind of dabbled with, or was it always just kind of more of fishing in general?
Yeah, I can't really say the walleye side of things were really in play. I I probably didn't catch my first walleye until about 12, 13, 14. Maybe that's maybe 14-ish. Um, so I can't really say my family was a big walleye or into that got me to that young. And also like the cabin I lived on, like the lake didn't really have walleyes, so
Hmm.
probably another part of it too. But yeah, walleye for sure. And as I grow older, especially ice fish and walleye for sure is something I love to target more. So
Right, yeah. Yeah, see you're falling into the stereotype now.
yep.
So I guess, excuse me, when did you when did you get into bass fishing, or was that something that just kind of came in with the whole fishing side of things after a while?
Sure. Yeah, that probably started as I got a little bit older, but at my cabin we had this um paddle boat, and it's a very small lake, so it's not like you're gonna get like swamped by big wake boats or whatnot. So you could easily take the paddle boat around the bay. And I remember throwing a little curly tail, like Berkeley green, orange curly tail, and crystal clear water. And I remember standing up on the back of this thing, just making long casts across the bay, and just seeing the bass follow it in. And I think that's like my first like true memory of like bass fishing, and kind of what it got started for me because yeah, I'll say that mainly got me into it was fishing there, and not things at that point I didn't even know what a big largemouth was because I would lose my shit at that time if I saw a 3 or 4 pounder. But
Right, yeah,
catching 12 to 14 inches was got it started. So
right. So kind of something that I grew up doing once I did get into bass fishing, or like kind of get into just kind of fishing more as a whole, but especially bass fishing. Like here in the winter time, obviously we can both ice fish, but it's not something that you can or maybe always want to do 24/7. I mean, here it takes a solid 2 or 3 weeks from when it starts to get cold for the winds and everything to kind of be perfect for the ice to really get strong and safe. So you get stuck in the house for a couple weeks at a time before and after winter. And that was a lot of the time I used that to like just do deep dive. Maybe not necessarily from like a research standpoint or from like a gaining knowledge, but more so like an entertainment side of things where I was on YouTube watching, the whole Guggen Squad prior to them being Guggen Squad and everything. And I feel like a lot of people did that. Was that something like, did you kind of fall into the fishing YouTube side of things, like the fishing like content side of things when you were younger?
Yeah, for sure. I can't say exact age, but for sure at some points where I was strictly like, yeah, Guggen Squad, John B, AP Bass, not to sound cliche, but like that was exactly kind of probably a part of it too. And seeing that, and for sure those down times in late fall and early spring too, where it's like ice isn't good enough to go ice fishing, and then also in the
Yeah.
spring where it's like ice isn't good enough to fish, so you got to sit there and wait, and you're rigging rods up, and you're just hoping you can get out there. So yeah, for sure, those down times where you're doing what you can to be in the fishing mind without actually fishing. So
Yeah, yeah. What about uncut angling? You an uncut angling guy?
yes, yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's
um,
what I figured. That's
yeah,
one
early
that's not
on,
cliche.
true. Yeah, I can say maybe more Midwest northern people for sure might be more of an uncut angling guy versus a Guggen squad. But yeah, uncut and then ice fishing. There's so many guys I still watch.
Yeah.
Jake Demons for one. I love his videos.
Yep. Jay's
Uh,
sweet.
yeah, yeah, all around. So
Yeah. And
so
so,
many more. Yeah.
right, yeah. And so like kind of I mean, dude, I think I credit YouTube for really you can have bad days of fishing, but when you're a kid growing up, like there's not a bad day of watching somebody else fish on YouTube. It's like the highlights of their whole fishing excursion while you're stuck inside, like I said, freezing your butt off or whatever it may be. So, I mean, that was something that like I was growing more and more invested into bass fishing, and I wasn't even able to fish for 6 months out of the year. And so you got to think of it like that's kind of crazy to think about how a young kid, a 13-year-old can just go from being into fishing and then fast forward 5 months through winter and they've spent $500 on bass fishing gear and they've never actually targeted bass before what they've watched on YouTube. That's kind of crazy to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember one, it must have been like the end of winter, and my grandpa's getting old, but not to like just he's like, yeah, I'm not gonna like use this tackle box anymore. So he gave me his tackle box and like was full of like typical Sankos with EWG hooks and spinner baits and things like that. And I was just could not wait for the ice to melt so I could use it. Like I was tying it up, just thinking about it, and just like, and of course here the laws in Minnesota were a little different for catch and release on bass before early season. So at that time, it was kind of on the edge of. I'm like, oh, I jumped on my bike one day, and I'm like, wait, I can't even. I turned around, I was like halfway down the street. I'm like, I can't even fish right now. So I got to throw a crappie jig on and go down there and catch what I can catch on a smaller jig, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah, I forget about that. Kind of explain to people who don't know because here in Michigan we have the same season kind of as you guys, but ours is reversed. We can catch like they don't really care about you catching bass. They throw a stink about you catching pike out of season. So kind of what's your guys' bass season like and what are the regulations about that? Because the first time I ever heard it, it blew my mind.
yes, yeah. It's I know there's talks about switching it over, but so the rule basically is through basically March 1st to first couple weekends in May is like our out of fishing season period. And in that time, you can't even target bass and catch and release, um, which a lot of people have strong opinions on because a lot of people who target bass are not keeping them. Um, and so even Wisconsin's different. So it's like I can jump over and drive an hour to Wisconsin and be able to bass fish early May pre-spawn. And then you get to Minnesota, it's like pre-spawn, like even the really warm springs we have, like it'll be fishing opener, and there'll be bass already on beds, which is for sure something. It's like you don't even get that opportunity to fish for those pre-spawn largies here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Dude, I've heard of Minnesota Fish and Game like pulling up to people's houses who have made YouTube videos that they know live in Minnesota, and they've got to say like, "Hey, were you fishing for bass in Minnesota?" No, no, I was in Wisconsin. Well, okay, we can't prove that you were or weren't. All right, have a good day. Just make sure you're not doing that here in Minnesota. This was a couple of years ago, and I heard that, and I was like, "Are you serious? Like that is crazy."
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't had any like people I know or had any interactions like that, but that doesn't surprise me. I've heard stories about it. Um, Another thing to kind of go with that is like, obviously, I don't have like a test tank or anything in my garage. So, come March, early spring, it's like I'm technically not even allowed to go test my baits at a open spot of water if I can find it um, around here, which is kind of annoying. Um, makes my life a little bit harder, but it's nice having a cabin about an hour away in Wisconsin that can always jump over there and whatnot. I go to school there too, so it's not the end of the world, but just another thought. It's like I can't even go test a bait or two until season opens technically.
Right.
Then they
Yeah,
do it for trying to musky fish or something. So
that's crazy. I know. So like here, if you go out like and that's kind of the same thing here. Like I've gotten stopped before when I was downstate and I'm trying to fish like the glideway like 176 for smallmouth or something. And it's that time, I think like April, it's like January, February, March to April, end of March to like tail into April is like when you're not allowed to pike fish. And so like the DNR would stop me and they're like, "What are you fishing for?" And I'm like, "Smallmouth." And they're like, "No, no, you're not." And I was like, "Yeah, I don't know how I can make this any more clear.
sure.
I am fishing for smallmouth. I promise you that." Well, that looks like a pike bait. Well, it's not. And so it's just their word versus yours, which is kind of annoying, especially if in honesty you are going for smallmouth like I was. It's kind of a kind of screwing yourself over when you're going out with a swim bait around that time here.
Yeah, you're just drawing attention to yourself for obviously something you're not doing wrong, but it's if somebody's got a question to ask, they're gonna ask it. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just a pain in the butt, dude. But if we fast forward a little bit, say like 2017, 2018, right before you kind of got into the whole swim bait stuff, were you pretty big into bass fishing as a whole, or were you still kind of like getting into it, like still fishing for fun, fishing for whatever, and then bass fishing when you wanted to?
um I would say I was pretty big into it, kind of getting to that point. Kind of I would say obviously not as much as I am now, but building up to it. Um I'm trying to think. That was yeah, start of high school. Yeah, so I would say for sure getting into it, getting other rods. I think I got like a St. Croix with a Shimano Canon, so like probably like a lower end combo, but for
Mhm.
my birthday one year, and that was probably around then. So yeah, for sure, probably right around then is when it really started to turn up and started to be able to buy my own rods and things like that. That kind of really got the bass fishing thing going for me. So
Now, growing up north, you said you're kind of by the Twin Cities, so you may not have had as much of a problem with it. But is there like tackle shops that carry bass fishing stuff, or was it more of you had to order a lot of stuff online when you were first getting into it?
um I would say, yeah, I'd say a lot of the stuff I would be able to get at first, like Fleet Farm for one. Yeah, Cabela's. We got a Cabela's not too far away. So between those two, I would say at a younger age, high school, I probably didn't order too much stuff offline before I started the whole swim bait thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, I know like Fleet Farm, like you said, or like we have Blaine's over here. they all care. Like Blaine's, when Blaine's opened up, they actually had a lot of bass fishing stuff. Like they had the SLXs when they were new. Like it was kind of crazy. Like if I was just getting into bass fishing around that time, that would have been an absolute blessing. But I had to, growing up in a small area, order a lot of stuff, and that was kind of a pain in the butt because like I don't know how a rod feels if I've never felt it before, and that was got pretty gun shy ordering a lot of rods. And then my first swim bait rod, I just told my family which one I wanted for my birthday, and it got here, and I was like, well, I don't know if this is a good swim bait rod or not because I've never held one, but I'm gonna use it. And so that was the first swim bait rod. Did you like were you using a musky rod when you or I guess before we talk about that, how did you like find out about the swim baits and kind of decide that was something you wanted to get into?
Yeah. So there's like two different sections for this one. Um, buddy of mine, Jack Schoen, he actually works for Throwback. Um, Also, some of you know he caught the mother fish on Mother's Day up here
Yeah,
in Minnesota.
yeah.
So he was actually in my brother's grade, doing the same high school. I think we had like a home construction class together. So I knew who he was before this, but we had a home construction class together. Um, and I knew he was a big into swim baits before I was. He had a Roman negotiator, and I think that was probably the first one I saw, and I was just like losing my mind over it. It was wood and handmade Japan, and at that time I grew up really into woodworking.
Mm.
High school, I did cabinet making, like competitions too. So always like woodworking, and I always like art and like pretty creative, I would say. So I looked at that, I'm like, I could make that. Not in a way I'm like, oh, I'm gonna rip that off. But it was just kind of the point, like, I'm not gonna pay $150 for that. Like,
Right.
I think I can make it myself. Um, and then we went fishing with him a couple times, and it's like you see him miss a big bass right next to a dock or just catch a couple, and just from there it kind of took off. And then another part was my cabin being on a trout lake, and kind of I don't know exactly remember, like I can't say like the first video I've seen or the first Instagram thing I saw of a trout eating bass, but there's always that mind like I was never really able to catch those big bass in the summer. So my mind started going to like, well, they're out deep eating trout. It's a small lake. It's spring fed. It's 75 feet deep. So that was the other part of it too, is trying to replicate that side of things because I could never really figure out a big bite. So I was like, well, they got to be eating trout, which to this day might be up in the air if they're doing it or not. But so that was kind of two sides of it, was through Jack, and then also through seeing bass maybe eat trout and
Hmm.
maybe connecting that to my cabin lake. So there's that.
Dang, dude. So you knew like you had excuse me, sorry guys. So you had an idea of trout of bass eating trout eating bass like way early when you got into the swim bait scene.
Yes. Yeah, that was kind of, and obviously that's not really a super common Midwest or Northern thing. Um, but yeah, it was always a thought in my mind. And one of the first couple baits, actually the first bait I painted with my new airbrush, which we'll probably talk about a little bit down the road, was a three-piece trout that I purposely made. It was probably about 7 or 8 inches that I purposely made to fish at my cabin. And I can't say I put that much time into it or to fish it, to catch anything on it, but that was for sure the main reason for it, was to try to purposely throw it at my cabin where there was trout and bass. So
Yeah. Before you made that bait, did you have any prior experience with carving? Like up here or like here, I should say, I got kind of big into pike decoys, like carving pike decoys. So if I was to take that, I kind of have some idea a little bit like how to woodwork and whatnot. Was there any prior experience before that for you?
I can't necessarily say with like carving directly. I mean, I was kind of back to the woodworking thing. I always like from a young age, my grandpa had like a wood shop connected to his house, and that started my kind of, I don't know, creativity and my love
Yeah.
for woodworking pretty early. And then like high school hit and I had wood shop classes and got more into cabinetry. But not necessarily carving. Carving, there's maybe some like logs or something I tried to carve. I think I carved a log into a pencil at some point, just because I was bored and screwing around. But the carving thing for sure, I think came more as I was got into the lure making and the swim bait side of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess once you sat down, like, did you have an idea that you wanted to make a trout bait because that's like what you thought those bass were eating at the cabin?
Yes. Yeah. I all to this day, all my baits start on a piece of paper. It's a drawing, like a paper, pencil, sit there. I mean, now it only takes me about 5 to 10 minutes to if I get a new idea or a new profile I want to draw. But yeah, I still remember I drew. I can like still picture it. I drew that like 7, 8 inch trout on a lined piece of paper, cut it like I cut it out, and it even had like top fins and whatnot. It's actually still sitting in my room uh, to this day. But yeah, I sat down, drew the profile out in a piece of paper first, and then kind of cut it out, traced it on a board, and at that time I just cut it out with like a jigsaw by hand. So not even like a power jigsaw, but like a hand one. So
Damn, dude.
yeah.
Did you have any idea how you were gonna do the joint and stuff prior to getting there? Or was it just like I'm gonna work this one at a time? Like I'm gonna do this one
Oh,
step at a time.
yeah. I think kind of something I haven't mentioned it was back to kind of the YouTube thing was Marling Bates for sure
Yeah.
was somebody I every video came out. It was as soon as I could watch it, I watched it. And that was a lot where I learned so much. Um, and some other bait makers too, but strictly through him like that, I learned so much. Besides like that probably is where I learned most of my things. And then over the years, just obviously just experience and whatnot. It's probably the second most where I've learned it. So I say the joint thing, can't remember exactly how I did it, but I'm pretty sure I had like a 45-degree piece of wood or something I put next to the bait and I cut into it. So I had some knowledge at least. I'll say I can't remember exactly how I did it, but I don't think I was screwing around for the first time with that trout. And I think I made some swim baits before that, um, maybe 5 or 6 before that one. And that strictly was kind of the one I first used my airbrush on.
Yeah.
Um, so I think by that time I kind of figured the joints out.
Right.
But yeah.
When you So you had mentioned, and I can't remember if you said it was a trout or like the gill bait that you had drawn out, but you still had like all the top fins and stuff on it. Did you do that for a while? And I know your baits now don't have the fins, so is that something that you kind of just phased out as a maybe just, like essentially less work to put in all the detail and stuff? And obviously, I would think from maybe even a function standpoint, like how has your carving changed from when you started to now? Like how do you carve a bluegill now compared to how you did when you first started?
Sure. Yeah, for sure. Was something I kind of did at a earlier time was like for that trout. I want to say I had like a typical like top fin and maybe like a fin on the bottom right on the back, and so that was something that obviously takes more time and more like carving. I think I had to like get like a chisel out and work it with that. And some of the early bluegills I did too. I think I did some of the fins on top. Um, and then I think just for like carving the gills too, I was kind of screwing around between a Dremel and like some files, and some like carving knives, but I didn't really find a super clean way until I found like a box knife that with
Yep.
break off blade. And to this day, there's nothing that can compare to that. Um, but then two is like after doing a handful of kind of the more realistic baits, leaving the fins on the top, it's obviously a lot more work. So I kind of faded out from doing that, and I love more the cleaner look, and kind of like the complete profile of a bait, but like smooth and not with the fins. And then there's always the talk about the fins on a bluegill, the hookup ratio, and things like that. So I've kind of just left it off and haven't really thought about going back to it, but I kind of like the sleek and smoothness without extra fins on it. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Yeah, the no fins make baits like no, I shouldn't say no fins, no top fins like spines. Like a bluegill bait without spines looks so slick. It just looks, especially in the water, it just looks like a fish that just doesn't even care. There's no sense of urgency to it whatsoever. And then on top of that, like that just, I mean, you when you paint it, I can't imagine you would put too much detail in it. I mean, if you look at a HUD or look at some other baits that have top fins, there's really it's just a solid color. Like there's nothing crazy that makes it stand out or whatnot. And like I said, I feel like that's just more work where you gotta carve it all out, or I should say cut it all out and then carve it, input all the details and stuff. And I feel like it's a bigger pain in the ass than what it's worth essentially, what you're getting out of it.
for sure, yeah, it's kind of come down to, especially back to like the wood, making wood baits is it's a lot of hands-on time, and so like just removing that step significantly takes down how much time it takes.
Yeah.
And it's quicker, and to me, I think it looks kind of like smoother and kind of what we were saying. So kind of a combination of that's kind of made that decision. So
Right, yeah. When you Was there a time that you ever wanted to or tried to carve scales into the whole bait? Or did you always know that you were just gonna use use a piece of mesh and just paint texture onto the baits?
for sure, yeah, there was a handful. I don't even want to say a handful. At least one or two baits where I carved every single scale on, and that was the lake down the street from my house. I was fishing a little Rapala one day, for scales, bass, whatever, and actually caught like a 5-inch golden shiner. And I'm like, oh my God. And this is at the time, like middle of kind of when I was getting started with this. So I was like, I got to make one of these. Um, and it wasn't too big. So I'm like, yeah. And so that was the first time I think I tried to carve every single scale. And I did it. And I think it looked all right. But to the point where I didn't really want to do it again. I can't imagine doing that
Yeah,
for
yeah.
multiple
People,
days.
right. People got to think from a standpoint of carving baits all from wood, like no resin baits. On top of when guys do like a master, like use a wood bait as a master, like they can build spots up with clay. They can cut all the scales into clay, and if they don't like it, they can rip it off. Whereas you, if you just say you do something that you don't like, whether it doesn't look good or whatnot, you're kind of screwed. Like maybe you have a way to get around it, but essentially that you just freaking toss that bait out and have to start carving onto a new one. Like it's kind of crazy. Like you put in a lot of detail and up to a point you can put so much detail in it, but if you start getting carried away and you start messing up, like you're gonna start costing yourself some time.
Yes, yeah, for sure. There's some things in wood where it can be forgiving in some points, where I make crack or something, or something tears out, I can fill it in. I got UV resin that I freaking love because it's quick and cures hard. But for sure, when you're trying to get some detail, there's some points where you just kind of like got to decide what you got to do next, because you either can't go back and do it. And most of the time, I pains me to restart. And that's worst case scenario. So I'm always looking for ways to make it right rather than restart, because save me a lot of time if I can do that. So
Right. Yeah. Did you ever have any experience like painting, like with the airbrush gun prior to when you picked one up for bait painting?
no, I did not. I Nope, I did not have much. Um, besides probably watching Marlon Bates or YouTube videos, not really an experience with an airbrush. So it was new to me.
So that's something that's almost intimidating because there's so much stuff behind it, like what kind of paint to use, making sure you have the right setup so you're not gonna die while you're spraying paint. Like that's a big leap to take when you're getting into the whole thing, I bet.
For sure, yeah. I was the first. I shouldn't say the first or only, but one of the main things is I was just worried about how I was going to clean it and keep it, so it wouldn't clog up or just completely like seize on me. Or so kind of the first thing I was like watch videos of how to take it apart, how to clean it, how to put it back together. Um, and now that's just I can pretty much do it in my sleep. So yeah.
Did you have to, were you able to buy one local or did you have to order it online?
Um, Actually, yeah. So I got it for Christmas. I think it was cheaper, but it was like a beginning set. So it came with a small air compressor, um, and the brush. I don't know if there's like a no, there wasn't a cleaning kit with it, but it was kind of a kit. I think it was off of like Amazon or something. Wasn't too much, but it for sure was a good airbrush to start with. Um, but nothing you would wanna. I would not wanna use it to this day, but actually it broke. So it was kind of telling me it was time to get a better one. So
And was it one of those ETA or whatever the hell everybody always posts about?
um it was it was called a master airbrush. I don't know if that's sparks a bell with anybody, but I think it's a pretty basic.
Mm,
Wasn't too high of a quality, but wasn't the lowest, I should say.
yeah.
So got me paying a lot of baits with it, but it was nice to upgrade for sure.
Yeah, it's nice. Like that's when I started with my camera stuff. I had a cheap, relatively cheap camera. And it's nice once you learn that and like you get the platform down and everything, and then whether that one breaks or you just, grow out of it and you get something new and you're like, oh my gosh, I know how to use this thing. Like I'm getting this thing's full potential out of it right out of the box. Like that's a really good feeling to have. And yeah, the saying buy once, cry once, but if you're gonna buy something and beat the piss out of it and learn on it and then buy something nice eventually later down the road, that's a really, really nice feeling to have when you get that new thing and you know how to use it already.
For sure. Yeah, it was slick. I think I upgraded the I honestly upgraded the airbrush, and then I got a whole new like compressor setup. It was like I got like a Makita quiet one, so could handle a lot, but also I could have it running next to me and not sound like a can't hear myself think.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was nice. I kind of upgraded it all at once, and it was still use it to this day. So it's nice.
Was there a lot of touch and go on like finding the style paint you wanted to use, whether it was like oil base or water base or whatever else it may be, like brands you like and stuff that take a while for you to dial in?
Um, a little bit. I think between um Hobby Lobby and ordering stuff online, I was able to get a decent amount of I think there's like two main brands I use, and I came to the conclusion over time of some metallic like white paints reacted with my clear coat and things like that. So there's kind of some process of elimination and some um, just time with it to tell which ones spray better and which ones I have to thin and things like that. And I'm still learning to this day. So
Do you mix a lot of your own colors, or do you kind of just take them out of the bottle and just spray them how they are?
um, a lot of them I will spray how they are. However, like my white and my black, I always like thinning. In my opinion, I'm able to get to spray better, and
Mhm.
white and black are your two enemies because if they splat at all, it's pretty obvious.
Right, yeah.
So but my black and white are the main ones that I thin, and but the rest of them I pretty much um, can kind of spray them out of the bottle. There's one or two colors I have where I know they're thicker and I have to thin them, but the
Yeah.
majority of my ones I can just take right out of the bottle.
Do you like mix and match colors like to make your own colors a lot of the time? Like maybe make green hues for the top of your gills or whatnot?
Sure. I used to do that a lot earlier on when I didn't have as much variety. But now it's like I go to Hobby Lobby, I'm like, I could use that color or something like that.
Right, yeah.
And I would say it's honestly probably been a while since I've mixed um a color. But for one instance, for my pumpkin seed, kind of that like reddish brown that the red lines or dots or whatever you call that kind of go throughout the pumpkin seed.
Hmm.
That was something I didn't really have, so that's probably the color I will mix. And I'm sure there's colors out there that replicate it. But besides that, I just layer. I think I'll layer a lot of my colors to get, for instance, the top of the bluegill green, like combination of like green and golds, and so I don't mix too often.
Right. And that's something that, say you're making a batch of baits and you mix up a batch of green and you run out three-quarters of the way and you're like, crap, I am so screwed. And I was supposed to make a dozen this color, and now I only have 10. And I feel like when I had Garrett on from Garrett's Customs, he was talking about mixing and how, when he runs out, he just runs out and he makes a new variant of it. And I'm like, dude, that would scare the crap out of me. Like, who's to say you're not going to run out halfway through a bait and just be SOL with it?
Yes, yeah, that's something for sure. It's like that pumpkin seed color I mix. I spray half of my baits. Say I do them three at a time. I spray three, or I spray half of three baits, and then I flip it over and I spray the mesh pattern on the other side. So I always have to remix that color, which can be scary. But if it's like that brownish red, I'm always like, okay, I did this much brown and three drops of red or something like that. And I try to keep it to a thing, get it close. And what I do too is like I have a scrap board that I spray on, and I know what the last mixed color looks like, so I can kind of go for that. But it is scary, and it's something I try not to do often. But there's sometimes I have to do it. So
Right. Have you come around so I feel like guys either like making the baits, like carving and stuff, or they love painting. Is there one that you kind of enjoy doing more than the other?
ooh, I can't say I do. I feel like the process is so long that when I get to the next step, it's kind of rewarding. Um, to the point where it's like, oh, great, I don't have to sand anymore. I can paint. So I feel like that side of it kind of makes painting and carving equally as fun in a way. Obviously, sanding sucks. Um, but I love carving softwood. I hate carving hardwood. I think that might be how the most of us are who carve. But
Right, yeah.
I would say carving softwood and painting cool patterns are up there with the best part of it. So
How how do you get it so symmetrical from side to side? I mean, obviously you've been doing it for, going on 5, 6 years now, so you've got an eye for it. But how, like, were you taking measurements when you first started to make sure everything was kind of pretty close the whole way through? Since you are working with wood, it's not like resin where you can sand a bait down to a certain point or make it a little bit bigger and know how much you have to sand down. So kind of how do you get the sides as close as you can to matching the other side?
sure, yeah, I use a lot of well, I guess the first thing I do is I use a Sharpie to get a center line, which is something I've been doing for a while now, and I think it's almost like it's a have to now with the baits, to get that perfect line down the center. And then those I'll obviously put my line ties, my hook hangers into, and I'll drill my lead holes on. So that's kind of one thing is the center. And then I do kind of the same thing to do the taper on the front of my baits and towards the tail. I mark it so it's equal distance from the sides of each board, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So a lot of marks with Sharpies, and then for the sanding wise, um, I just use my finger and a pencil to make a equal line all the way around, and I have kind of marks of where to go, and I've done so many baits that it's like I can use a pencil and my finger and perfectly draw a line that's half inch from the edge all the way around. And And then I sand down to those lines, and those lines are the same on both sides. So basically, through that and a lot of repetitiveness and having made a decent amount of baits, I'm able to kind of get it. And then a lot of it's just looking at a bait and being like, well, this part looks a little bit different than that side, so I got to sand a little bit more. So sand to the lines, and then honestly, my eye, I do a lot of stuff with just making it look right based off of my own eyes. So
Yeah, dude, I could not do that because I'm the type of guy who would sand one side down and be like, oh, this other side needs to be sanded down just a little bit more, and then just go back and forth until that bait's just completely concave. Then I'm just screwed. I'm like, oh, well, time to move to the next one.
yep, yeah, I feel yeah. It's to the point where I've gotten it down. Um, but I've had times where it's like this side don't look right, and like this side, and um, can't say I like sanded away a base, but there's for sure times where you remove a little bit more material than necessary. But yeah, just always seems like I'm able to do what I can with the mistakes or the adjustments I made. So every bait's slightly different.
Oh yeah, dude. I cannot even begin to imagine that. Have you had like I mean, dude, say you're sitting or say you're up late, you're sanding baits or whatever else, maybe putting in the detail on the gill pad or gill plates. Do you like does it ever pop into your head that you should just make a mold and make resin baits, or do you
Oh,
just like the wood that much?
I it pops in my head every once in a while, but also uh not to say my dad would kill me, but he's always likes me sticking to the handcrafted name, and he's like, just I think he would give me shit if I even thought about it. So,
Right, yeah.
but no, I just think the wood's so unique, and not to rip on people that are making resin baits, but there's people that make them and they make them good. But I like being unique and different, and I could just be another person who makes resin baits. But it's like I have the time, at least right now, and the passion and the experience that it's hard for me to to switch up. But I do know that it would probably save me a lot of time, and I'd probably um, make more money at that rate. But
Right.
like I said, I'm not really in it for the money. I just love making good products. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So you make the 5 inch gill, the 6 inch gill. What other baits have you made, or do you like maybe plan on making and bringing out in 2025?
sure, yeah, I the 5 inch kill is something I'm heavy on right now. I've got that process dialed, and the action. Um, I'm able to get the action down on that and pretty consistent, knock on wood. But the 6 inch gill, I've kind of slowed down production on just because I love it. But the 5 inch gill sells a lot better, and the action's so much better, and I'm able to get more consistent. Um, so 5 and 6 is I foresee continuing to make fives for sure. Um, I've screwed around with 6 inch gill wakes, and that really hasn't something I've sold. But I think it's something I easily could sell because I love how they look. I put a feathered tail on them. There's not too many of them out there. Yeah. And besides that, I think just getting the process down with the 5 inches is what I'll stick to. But I like making one-offs. And the nice thing about the wood baits is I can easily draw up a trout pattern or a Cisco pattern and easily make it, and not have to like make a master and come up with a mold. So that's one positive out of wood, I guess, if there is one, is just the freedom to kind of make whatever bait you want. I made two 10.5 inch glides, and those are some I haven't caught a fish on, but it's just fun to even make and just see. Um, but for sure, sticking to the 5 inch and some 6 inch gills for 2025. Um, yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. Yeah, I think you brought a waking gill to the throwback shop that day, or maybe Isaac had one. I feel like I'd seen one in person before, and I'm guessing it was with you guys. I feel like maybe it was maybe during the tournament you had one, and I had seen it then, maybe.
Yes, yeah, I think I want to say probably was at the throwback shop. I've got a couple of them. I got one with a wood grain pattern and one with some natural gill schemes. So yeah, that's probably my guess where you've seen them. And I've caught a lot of fish on them, but um, to the point where I haven't really created a batch to sell on the website.
Yeah, right, right. What I guess we'll talk about because you guys did really, really good for the throwback tournament, and so this was in June, I think, June of 2024. Did you guys catch all your fish on your baits?
Um, I want to say of our we caught a. I think we that day. I think we caught 8 fish total. I think I want to say at least 4 or 5 of them came on my 5 or 6 inch gill. We had a kicker that probably would have won us the tournament that came off right next to the boat on the 5 inch gill. But I know we got to a point between the two islands where we just were screwing them up on the 5 inch. And at that time, I just had one, and Isaac didn't even have a 5 inch. And he picked up my rod, and that's actually when he hooked that big one that we lost next to the boat. Then he picked up my rod and flung it, and of course hooked into one. He's like losing his mind because he it was like his first time really fishing the 5 inch. So we caught a decent amount, but then the guys that caught some on the TK for sure. He was dead walking the TK. So I think that was probably the only other bait that we caught fish on. Maybe a 6 inch mag actually too. So, but I think at least half of those fish came on the 5 or 6 inch gill. So that was fun for sure.
Yeah, because I remember talking to you guys after the fact, and I remember you guys saying that for swim bait fishing, you guys caught for a swim bait tournament, you guys caught like a whole slew of fish, which was pretty impressive to hear. And the fact that you caught, half of them, a little more than half on your bait, dude, that's badass to hear too.
Yeah, that felt good for sure. Actually, there was a funny story that night. Was I stayed up stupid late the night before because that 5 inch gill was like one of the first ones, and it was a hair under 5 inches, and I'm just like stressing. I'm like, all right, I ripped the Lexan hardtail out, and I put a rubber tail on that was a little bit longer to get it to 5 inches, and then I actually played with the joints. Um, and it was like a prayer at like 1 a.m. I'm just like, I just gotta, I might regret this if I don't get this how I want it for tomorrow. And I'm glad I did that because we caught a good number of fish on it. So
Yeah, because the tournament was 5 inch swim baits, right? So you were trying to meet the requirement.
yeah, I was just under. I'm like, well, I know how to fix that. So rip the
Right,
tail
yeah.
out. Yeah,
Dang, dude. And you guys got first, right?
we got second place by like point oh 0.08,
Oh,
point oh
yeah.
0.06 pounds.
Sean
Um,
got first, I think, right?
yep,
Yeah, okay.
they just got us. So,
Damn, dude.
but fun tournament for sure.
Dude, absolutely raining cats and dogs in the morning
Hmm.
before it
Oh yeah,
started. Like, absolutely. Dude,
yep.
it rained the whole time we were in Minnesota that trip.
Mm. Yeah, I remember the bite. I want to say we caught two fish in the span of like a minute right before that lightning strike hit, and I don't know, it felt like we were just about to smoke them, and because we caught two back to back, and that lightning struck hit, and we're like, yeah, it's not worth our lives for a 3 pound largie, so we decided to
Right.
go back. But we didn't. There was no more lightning strikes, so we kind of were like, we should have stayed on that spot. Who knows? We could have got that extra point of 0.06 pounds, but can't complain.
Yeah, yeah, dude. It was like I don't know. I've never fished that lake. Obviously, I'd never been there, never been out on it except for when I was out on the boat ramp. But it looked like a pretty decent lake. I mean, the connecting lake that we went and fished off the paddle boards was pretty decent. Like it looked like a fun place to fish for the most part. It looked pretty fishy, I would say.
Yeah, it was. We didn't really know what we're getting ourselves into, because that was the first time either one of us had fished that lake. The year before the first throwback tournament, we did pre-fish, and we caught Isaac caught one fish during the tournament and happened to be a 5 pounder, with about a half hour left in the tournament. So we kind of lucked out there. But yeah, this year we didn't really know what we were doing going into it. Luckily got like second second boat to leave the ramp in the morning, so we got to a spot where we thought looked good and turned out not too bad. So
Heck yeah, dude, that's awesome, man. Trying to think, you have anything crazy planned for 2025? Like any crazy baits or anything like that?
I I don't know. I just want to say I'll be heavy on the 5 inch. I Last year I probably made 35 to 40 baits total. And as of now I got 20 baits, 25 inch gills ish, two other ones, about 18 5 inch gills and two other ones in the making already. So it's looking like it should be a pretty good year for the amount of baits I'll be able to make. Hopefully, knock on wood. But nothing really, really crazy. I don't really do any like custom work for people because I just want to keep it simple. But I do if I got family or friends that reach out and say they want something specific. I'm always interested to try it, and that allows me to try a different profile or something like that. So yeah, nothing crazy off the top of my head, but I always love making one-off baits every once in a while when I can. So
Right. Yeah. So 5 inch baits, you have some made up right now that you posted on Instagram. Do you have any idea when you think those will be finished up and ready for you to post up on the site?
yeah, hoping we got the freezer butt off tournament coming up in February here, second week of February. So I'm hoping to have those baits ready by then. And then the remainder will go up on the site. So roughly probably the second week in February, I bet I will have extras. If I don't, it'll be awesome, but I'm guaranteeing that I will have extras. So probably second or third weekend of February should be a good drop. I'm hoping.
Sweet. Heck yeah, dude. Yeah, freeze your butt off tournament. I'm excited for that. I don't think I'll be able to make it for it, but I'm gonna send some hats and some hoodies and stuff and some magazines. I'm excited. That's always one I'm really excited to see the guys post about once that's all finished up. Super crazy fishery over there. I've gotten to fish it a couple times now, and it's absolutely insane. I haven't gotten to fish it in the winter time, but I've gotten to see you guys post enough pictures and stuff of it that I know it's absolutely nutty if you can get on the fish out there. Super cool event, and yeah, like I said, we'll be having some stuff sent over there for that. When you guys are hearing this, it'll be the week before. So check in, see if you guys can make it. Go fish that because super cool event. Pretty much fishing the Mississippi River for winter smallmouth on swim baits. Something that is absolutely crazy. It's that something that you do a lot in the winter time, or do you usually kind of just do it around the tournament and maybe once or twice throughout the year?
Um, this winter, say less. Last year we went out more, maybe partly due to the lack of ice to get out on ice fishing. This year, this true winter, I haven't been up there, but this like late fall, I have, and um, Isaac hits it a lot more than I do. Just being over at school, I'm about an hour and a half away. Um, uh, but it also being so cold and just taking this time to work on baits. Haven't been able to do so as much as I might want. But yeah, it's fun. When we do get up there, it's always a fun time.
Dude, absolutely crazy fishery. Super fun in the summertime. That's the only time I've ever fished it, but just a super crazy way that it all lays out and kind of have that opportunity to kind of like once or twice throughout winter, if you want to go scratch that swim bait itch, you guys can kind of go out and do that. Essentially, it's super cool, and I know that it's a grinder. Like there's times where you guys don't catch a fish for a couple trips, which that's swim bait fishing. But the fact that you can do it in the wintertime is just so badass, and it's super super cool. The whole event that they put on. So I wish you luck to. Are you going to fish it? I'm sure.
I am. Yep. Yep.
Sweet. So
So,
yeah, I hope or I wish you luck with that. What's the size regulations for that? Is it a 5 inch as well, like the throwback one?
um, it has been 6 inch minimum for hard and soft baits in the
Okay.
previous years, and I assume it's the same. So yeah, unfortunately, my 5 inch isn't in play, but um, probably be throwing a 6 inch gill, or I have this other like perch profile ones that I made a long time ago that decent smallmouth river profiles. So
Right, right. Heck yeah, dude. Was there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't touch on? I'm trying to think. Pretty much covered everything that I had written down, I should say.
yeah, I don't. There's one kind of back to like the YouTube thing a
Oh, yeah,
little
yeah.
bit. I was sitting, I think, couple springs ago. Um, well, I just to kind of make a long story short, Isaac and I went down fish with Current Lagmore for spring break. One one year, a couple years ago, and I gave him a bait, and I had an extra one that I said if you could get to John B, and he
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
"Yeah, I
I was
can
about
do
to say,
that."
I know where the story's going.
Yeah. And so sitting in math class one day later that year, springtime by us, and I got a DM from Grant saying that John B dumped like a 9 pounder on my bait on video. And I'm just like, yeah, no, I can't focus the rest of math class. I'm like, oh my God, I can't. And then it wasn't until that was probably in like April when I got that. And then it wasn't until like June when the video came out. But yeah, he's got one of his videos where he dumps like a 9 plus on my
Oh,
bait. Um, so I guess thinking back as a little kid, if I would have thought that John B would have fished my bait, let alone had a chance to catch a big fish on it, is super cool. Um, and then that also connection going down fish with Grant was fun, and like Jared reached out to me a couple weeks or months later saying he fished the 6 inch gill that I gave to Grant and he wanted one himself, and I'm like, holy crap, that's
that's
just
so
seeing
sick.
that as like a connection I've made along the way. It's like it's pretty sweet. So yeah.
That's so sick, dude. What I will say, what gear do you recommend for the 5 and 6 inch for like hooks, and then like what rods and line are you using?
Yeah. Let's start with the 5 inch. 5 inch, I have um size four owner. They come with size four owner ST36s. It's like that lighter wire, and what's I've been fishing with them. And I honestly I throw 15 pound fluoro. Um I don't have the Leviathan finesse, but I know that rod is perfect for him. I like has to catch on my Instagram from Andrews of catching a bass with the 5 inch
Mm.
5 inch with the finesse rod. He just says perfect. So it's tempting for me to get the finesse something parabolic like that's perfect. It's right around um an ounce and a half. So pretty light. Fish is pretty quick, pretty choppy. The 6 inch is a little bigger, around 3 ounces. It comes with ST56 size two trebles. And I mainly fished that with 20 pound on the what's I'm blanking on the Leviathan that throws like the 3 ounce range good.
Is that the
The
medium heavy?
Yeah, I think so. I get them mixed up all the time. But that's what I throw mine on is that Leviathan that covers that 3 ounce range. And I think it's like up to 4 ounces, 2 to 4, some. But yeah, so that's what I throw mine on. And I love it. So
Heck yeah, dude. Can you take the pin out and add weight if people want to, or do you kind of clear the pin in there?
Yeah, so my baits, I actually don't have a pin. They're both connections are glued in.
Okay.
So it's like a true, um, like,
Oh, I know what you're talking about, like a true
link.
eye lock style.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. So yeah, both the joints are epoxied in, so they aren't going anywhere. And then for weight wise too, there's not really too many adjustments or tuning you can make besides like uh, a weight patch to the bottom of it. So yeah.
Heck yeah, dude. Outside of that, where can the people follow you if they aren't following you already?
Yes, handcrafted baits on Instagram. The crafted is with a K, like my last name, so it's hand and then Krafted. Baits on Instagram, Facebook are the main two. TikTok, but we'll see where that goes. And
Yeah, when
then
this goes up, TikTok
handcraft.
might not be a thing anymore, so
Yep, yep. And then handcraftedbaits.com is where I do all my drops. So
sweet. And so when you guys are hearing this, mark your calendars for maybe about 2 weeks from when you guys are hearing this, and hopefully the site will have some baits if you guys are interested about that. Get them in, middle end of February. You only got a couple months if you live up north until you can start fishing them again, so that's super cool. Do you have any swim videos or anything on your page like that?
yes, I have a 5 inch one that posted over the last summer. So it might be a couple videos down of the 5 inch, and there's one of the 6 inch, but that's further down there. But my 5 inch gonna be my more popular ones I'm gonna be selling lately. So that 5 inch swim video, um, it's gonna be around about midsummer on my page, and
Perfect.
I'll get more up too whenever we see warm water again.
Right, right. Heck yeah, dude. As always, I'll put all of Connor's stuff in the show notes. You guys can go follow him if you don't already. I'll link his website. You guys can check it out, see if there's any baits on there at the time that you guys are listening to this. As always, make sure you follow Connor on all those platforms. I'm trying to think of anything else. If you guys are able to make it to the Freeze Your Butt Off tournament, that is second weekend of February over there in Monticello, Minnesota. Super cool event. Unfortunately, I have never been able to make it, and I don't think I'll be able to this month. But the guys over there do a super cool job putting that all together, and it's a pretty cool event. I've gotten to hear a bunch of people talk about it and talk to people about going and stuff, so that's always super cool. But make sure you guys follow the podcast on Instagram, Scales and Tails underscore media on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, or both Scales and Tails Media as well. Outside of that, I want to thank Connor for coming on. He's on his break still from school, so he was able to jump on. We were able to talk about his stuff. I snagged him before we left Minnesota the first time in June. I was like, "Hey, dude, we need to record an episode." He's like, "Yep, sounds good." And then we just never got around to it until now, which is completely fine. But we this has been manifesting for a while until this night. Like I said, make sure you follow Connor on the social medias, and yeah, I think that's everything. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and we'll see you guys on the next one. We'll talk to you guys later. See you guys.